Again, that's Joseph McElligott. He is Officer Gaffney, who's on trial today. He was his partner the night Laquan McDonald was shot. I'd like to bring now in someone that I haven't met before, hasn't been on with me, and I'm so excited. Kendall Coffey, a former federal prosecutor. Kendall, you've been patiently waiting over there. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. Now, something is interesting to me. Here in this clip, Officer McElligott says he turned to his partner told him to relax, and he was going to call for a taser, yet the prosecution has been saying that it wasn't Gaffney who called for a taser, that it was actually a dispatcher who called for a taser. With that in mind, can you assess for us the strength of what you're seeing so far about the prosecution case against all three officers, Gaffney, Walsh, and then Detective March?
Well, I think that to sort of start at the top with Detective March, we know from the testimony of Officer Dora Fontaine that he apparently spoke to her directly, had her specific words describing what she saw. What she saw did not include anybody lunging at the officers, and that's critical here because 16 bullets, there got to be a whole lot of justification for that. If he's not attacking, coming at the officers, then you shouldn't be shooting him dead.
Okay.
So even though March knew exactly what she saw, he attributed to her something very different. He put in the report that she said that McDonald was lunging. And that's the critical element and the core of the falsification. There are obviously other issues with the other officers, but March is dead center as the most potentially culpable in this group of three officers.
Okay, so Kendall, we are going to have to take a break. After we listen to more McElligott, I get your opinion on the other two officers, since we've heard your definite opinion on Detective or former Detective March. We have to take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. As you know, we are covering the Chicago cop cover-up case, and right now we're in a short break while the attorneys work out something. I'd like to bring my guest in, former federal prosecutor Kendall Coffey, because this is going to be right up your alley. While we were on break, we learned that what the prosecution wants to omit is a grand jury testimony of admissions of Officer Gaffney, who, as I said, is still on the police department, although he is suspended. And the prosecution says, hey, we had an agreement. Defense says, well, no, we had an agreement only on certain things, but if you're going to bring it in, I want all 47 pages read under what is called the doctrine of completeness, which means, you have to read it all to put it in perspective. Since you're a former federal prosecutor, does it come in or does it not come in?
Well, if I were the judge, I'd let it come in. I mean, because the prosecution obviously has some things that they think are admissions that Gaffney made in the testimony that could, in fact, be incriminating. So they want to use it. And they want to use it against the so-called co-conspirators. You talked a moment ago about the popularity of conspiracy theories with prosecutors, and one of the reasons is that you can bring in a co-conspirator's testimony, as you mentioned, against a different defendant. But it just seems to me that where you've got a bench trial, and the judge is supposed to be able to sort it out, maybe the path of least risk of reversible error or least risk of appeal is for the judge to say, look, I'm going to review the whole thing. I'll be able to determine what's relevant, what's not. I'm a judge. And we've got no jury here that we need to worry about.
That's the whole point. There's no jury here. So she's not, no appellate court is going to find out in any way that she is somehow biased because she heard all 47 pages. So why not just let it all in right then there? Why send them into the hallway to waste more time? I mean, that's what drives people crazy on trial sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the reasons that bench trials are supposed to make it a bit more efficient is judges can sort it out. They don't need to be protected, in effect, from prejudicial testimony or evidence to the extent that a jury might be. But looks like these folks are arguing about every little thing right now. So obviously they have the sense that the stakes are very high with this document.
Yeah, and I'm sure their stakes are high for all of their clients, especially Gaffney, who has not retired or resigned from the police department, because as we all know, there may be other things, not just criminal charges. If he wins this, he wants to go back in the community. He wants his pension. He wants to be a police officer. So we talked just before the break previously that you assessed the case for us, and we all know that you said that you thought the case against former Detective of March was just a no-brainer. And I would note that, as I noted yesterday to our viewers, that the Inspector General found that he was the critical touchstone in a whole cover-up that the Inspector General believed the Chicago Police Department undertaken. But what about Walsh and Gaffney? Do you feel the same about them?
Well, they're got a little bit easier time of hoping for an acquittal. Walsh, of course, is the one who said that he saw the victim rising back up, and that flat out contradicted by the tapes. And Walsh has a problem with that issue. Gaffney's a little bit less in harm's way. Obviously, he went along with the report, but you don't have the same kind of involvement that really, I think, is what's going to be a problem for March. And Gaffney at least can say, well, maybe I was confused. I mean, the guy hit his knife against the car, slashed the tires. Maybe Gaffney's got a little bit to work with. So if you were handicapping this thing, which you never
Right.
feel good about doing, but biggest problem is March, then Walsh, and then Gaffney. And then, we could talk about, if there's time, whether this was the right case to go to a judge trial or whether they should have rolled their dice with a jury.
Okay, so we're going to go right back in the courtroom. The prosecutor is talking. Let's hear. So we're hearing the recitation of Officer Gaffney's testimony before a federal grand jury. And Kendall Coffey, I know it's the end of the day and we're going to have to say goodbye to you pretty soon, but this seems to me pretty good police work of both Gaffney and McGillicuddy right here. And yet we know that within the next few seconds or so, Laquan McDonald will be shot dead. So how is it, does it help McGaffney or does it hurt Gaffney that they've taken all this time to walk, follow him, be patient with him, maybe call for tasers, and yet he ends up being dead?
Yeah, well, for Gaffney, it's a little bit helpful, isn't it? And what he's saying matches, from what I recall, of his partner, McGillicuddy, who was a prosecution witness. So it looks like Gaffney's being reasonable. Looks like he's trying to contain the situation, even though his car is sort of being knifed. And, of course, we're only hearing part of it, but so far so good for Gaffney. It doesn't really answer the question of whether he later intentionally participated in falsification of police reports, but it makes him and McGillicuddy look like decent cops.
Yeah, and it also, it would seem to me that it would help on sentencing should he get convicted, Kendall. Kendall, we're going to pretty much have to say goodbye to you. It's been great to be on with you to discuss this, especially since we had a federal issue, a federal grand jury, and you're a former federal prosecutor. This is a very, very serious case, as you know. We are covering here at Law&Crime this whole trial. It is a judge trial involving 3 officers who are accused of the cover-up of the shooting of Laquan McDonald for the benefit of one Jason Van Dyke, who's already been convicted. We are going to continue to monitor this courtroom, but we have to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back at the other side of this break to see what's happening in Chicago.